I never imagined that the person who cheered the loudest when I succeeded would be the same one trying to ruin it all behind my back. I'm sitting here now, months later, and I still can't fully wrap my head around what happened. How someone who knew my deepest fears, my biggest dreams, my most vulnerable moments could turn around and use all of that against me. But I guess that's what makes betrayal so devastating, isn't it? It never comes from strangers, it comes from the people who hold pieces of your heart. I remember us dancing in my dorm room the day we both passed our first finals. We were playing this terrible pop song from 2018, spinning around like we were still in high school, laughing until our stomachs hurt. She grabbed my hands and said, "We're going to conquer the world together." I believed her. God, I really believed her. We had matching friendship bracelets, shared Netflix passwords, and this unspoken promise that we'd always have each other's backs. But everything changed the moment I got ahead, the moment my life started moving in a direction she couldn't follow. This story has been stuck in my chest for a long time. And if you've ever felt betrayed by someone you trusted, if you've ever questioned whether your success was worth losing people you thought would celebrate it with you, maybe this will speak to you too. So if you relate, or just want more real stories like this, please like this video, leave a comment and subscribe. It truly helps me keep sharing what so many people are afraid to say out loud. Because honestly, I was afraid to tell this story for the longest time. I kept thinking, maybe I was overreacting, maybe I misunderstood, maybe I was the problem. But I've learned that sometimes the most important stories are the ones that make us uncomfortable to tell. We met during orientation week of our sophomore year. I was transferring to a new university, completely terrified, clutching my schedule, like it was a life preserver. I'd gotten there early, found a seat in the back corner of this massive lecture hall, hoping to blend into the wallpaper. She walked in 15 minutes late, looked around the room, and made a beeline straight for the empty seat next to me. I was having a full-blown anxiety attack about being in a new place, surrounded by people who already had their friend groups, their routines, their inside jokes. She noticed my hands shaking as I tried to take notes and leaned over and whispered, "Relax, this professor puts everyone to sleep anyway. Look, half the room is already checking Instagram." She made this exaggerated gesture toward the other students, and I couldn't help but laugh. That was it. We were inseparable after that. Sarah had this way of making everything feel less scary. She was confident where I was anxious, outgoing where I was reserved, fearless where I was cautious. We complemented each other perfectly, or at least that's what I thought. Within weeks, we were spending every free moment together, study sessions that turned into 3-hour conversations about everything and nothing, late-night walks around campus when we couldn't sleep. She knew I put hot sauce on everything, that I cried during commercials sometimes, that I had this recurring nightmare about showing up to class in my pajamas. I knew she bit her nails when she was nervous, that she called her mum every Sunday. At exactly 2 p.m, that she secretly loved romantic comedies, but pretended to hate them around other people. We made playlists for each other. Hers for me was called Songs for When You're Overthinking Again, and mine for her was Bad Day Anthems. We had this tradition where every Friday night, regardless of what else was happening, we'd order Chinese food and watch terrible Netflix movies. We'd pause every 10 minutes to analyse the plot holes or make jokes about the acting. She was my safe space when everything else felt like chaos. College was overwhelming. Being away from home was hard. Figuring out who I wanted to be. As an adult felt impossible most days. But I had Sarah, and that made everything manageable. She encouraged me to join clubs I was too shy to approach on my own. She helped me practice for presentations until I knew them by heart. When I got my first B+ on a paper I'd worked on for weeks, she bought me ice cream and said, "You're going to do amazing things, I can feel it." I believed her because she believed in me when I couldn't believe in myself. We talked about our futures constantly. She wanted to go into marketing. I was leaning toward research and maybe graduate school. We made these elaborate plans about living in the same city after graduation, being each other's maids of honour, having kids who would grow up as best friends. Looking back, I think those conversations meant more to me than they did to her. But, at the time, it felt like we were building something together. It started with small wins, really small. A professor mentioned me in class during a discussion about a paper I'd written. It wasn't even a big deal, just a passing comment about how I'd made an interesting connection between two theories we'd been studying. But I felt proud. I texted Sarah immediately, practically bouncing with excitement. Her response was short. Cool. Not, that's amazing, or I'm so proud of you. Just cool. I brushed it off. Maybe she was busy, maybe she was having a bad day. I didn't want to read too much into it. Then I got a call back for a research program I'd applied to on a whim. It was competitive, something I never thought I'd actually get chosen for. When I called Sarah to tell her, she was quiet for a long time. Too long. Sarah, are you there? I asked. Yeah, sorry, I'm here. That's great, really great. But her voice sounded flat, like she was reading from a script. I asked if everything was okay, and she said she was just tired. I believed her because I wanted to believe her, but that was the beginning of a pattern I didn't recognize yet. She started getting quieter during our study sessions. Before, we'd bounce ideas off each other, help each other work through difficult concepts, celebrate small victories like understanding a particularly complex reading. Now, she'd put in her headphones and focus on her own work, barely acknowledging when I'd make a breakthrough or get excited about something I was learning. When I'd try to share an idea or talk through a project, she'd nod politely but not really engage. It felt like I was talking to a wall. Our Friday night movie tradition started having more and more exceptions. She'd have other plans, or she'd say she was too tired, or she'd show up but spend the whole time on her phone. When I asked if I'd done something wrong, she'd insist everything was fine. You're overthinking again, she'd say, using that phrase. That used to be a gentle tease but now felt like a dismissal. Maybe I was overthinking, maybe I was being paranoid. Maybe success was making me sensitive to things that weren't really there. But then there were the comments, little digs disguised as jokes or observations. When I got selected for a presentation at a student conference, she said, "Wow, they must have been really desperate for presenters this year." When I mentioned that a professor had offered to write me a recommendation letter, she laughed and said, "Well, you've certainly been working hard to get on their good side." These comments always came with a smile, always delivered in a tone that could be interpreted as playful, but they left me feeling small and confused. I started second-guessing myself constantly. Was I being too eager in class? Was I trying too hard? Was I becoming one of those people who cared too much about grades and achievements? Sarah had always been the laid-back one, the one who reminded me that there was more to life than academic success. Maybe she was just trying to keep me grounded. Maybe she was looking out for me in her own way. I convinced myself that her behaviour was coming from a place of care, not something darker. The turning point came during spring semester. I'd been working on this research project for months, something I was genuinely passionate about. It was exploring the psychological impact of social media on self-esteem in college students. I'd conducted surveys, interviews, analysed data, the whole thing. It was the biggest academic project I'd ever undertaken, and I was proud of the work I was doing. My advisor was impressed and suggested I submit it to an undergraduate research journal. I was over the moon. I couldn't wait to tell Sarah. I found her in the library, working on her own assignments, and practically ran over to her table. "Sarah, you'll never believe what just happened," I started, trying to keep my voice down, but barely containing my excitement. She looked up from her laptop with this expression I'd never seen before. It wasn't happiness or curiosity, or even mild interest. It was something else, something that made my stomach drop. "What?" she asked, and there was an edge to her voice that I couldn't ignore. I told her about the journal submission, about my advisor's encouragement, about how this could potentially lead to other research opportunities. With each word, I watched her face change. She smiled, but I swear her eyes weren't smiling with her. It was like watching someone put on a mask in real time. "That's wonderful," she said. But the word wonderful came out wrong, stretched too thin, like she was trying to convince herself as much as me. "You must be so proud of yourself." There was something about the way she said proud of yourself that felt like an accusation, like being proud was something shameful. I tried to read her expression, to understand what was happening, but she'd already turned back to her laptop. "Are you okay?" I asked. "You seem upset." She laughed, but it wasn't her real laugh. It was sharp and hollow. "Why would I be upset? This is great news. You're really making a name for yourself around here." Again, there was that tone, like making a name for myself was somehow problematic. I sat down across from her, confused and hurt. "Sarah, what's going on? You're acting strange." She closed her laptop and looked at me directly for the first time since I'd sat down. "I'm not acting strange. You're just being sensitive. Can't you just take a compliment?" But it hadn't felt like a compliment. It had felt like criticism wrapped in congratulations. I left the library that day feeling more confused than excited about my achievement. Sarah had this way of making me question my own perceptions, my own feelings. She'd gaslight me so subtly that I'd walk away wondering if I was losing my mind. The pattern continued and escalated. Every success, no matter how small, was met with lukewarm responses or backhanded comments. When I got an A on a particularly difficult exam, she said, "Well, you always were good at telling professors what they want to hear." When I was invited to join an honour society, she rolled her eyes and said, "Those things are just popularity. Contests anyway." When I got a paid internship for the summer, she made a comment about how connections matter more than actual qualifications. Each comment chipped away at my confidence. I started downplaying my achievements, apologising for my successes, trying to make myself smaller so that Sarah would feel more comfortable. I thought that if I could just be less excited, less ambitious, less successful, our friendship could go back to the way it was. I was willing to dim my own light to keep her in my life, but it wasn't enough. The more I tried to minimise myself, the more she seemed to resent me. It was like she could sense that I was holding back, and that made her even angrier. She started making our mutual friends uncomfortable by making snide remarks about me in group settings. She'd tell embarrassing stories about me under the guise of being funny, but they were always stories that made me look foolish or naive. One night, we were at a party with our friend group, and someone asked about my research project. Before I could answer, Sarah jumped in. "Oh, you should hear about this," she said with fake enthusiasm. "She's been working on this project about social media and self-esteem, and she's convinced she's discovered something revolutionary. She's been obsessing over it for months." The way she said obsessing made it sound like I was unhinged. Everyone laughed, but it wasn't the warm kind of laughter that brings people together. It was the uncomfortable kind that creates distance. I felt humiliated and confused. Why was she making me sound crazy for being passionate about something? Why was she turning my dedication into a character flaw? I tried to laugh along, to play it off like she was just joking, but inside I was dying. This was supposed to be my best friend, the person who knew me better than anyone, and she was making me feel ashamed of who I was. After the party, I confronted her. "Why did you say that about my project? You made it sound like I'm obsessed or something." She shrugged. "I was just teasing. God, you really can't take a joke anymore. You've gotten so serious about everything." "I haven't gotten serious. I've gotten passionate. There's a difference." "Is there?" she asked, and there was genuine malice in her voice now. "Because from where I'm sitting, it looks like you think you're better than everyone else." The accusation hit me like a physical blow. That's not true. I've never thought that. Haven't you? When's the last time you asked me about my classes, my projects, my life? When's the last time we talked about anything other than your achievements? I tried to think back, and with horror I realised she might have a point. But it wasn't because I didn't care about her life. It was because every time I tried to share something positive about mine, the conversation became tense and uncomfortable. I'd started avoiding talking about myself to preserve our friendship, but apparently that hadn't worked either. "I do care about your life," I said. "I ask about your classes all the time." "You ask, but you don't really listen. You're just waiting for your turn to talk about yourself again." That wasn't true, but I could see that she believed it. Or maybe she didn't believe it, but she needed to believe it to justify how she'd been treating me. I didn't know anymore. I was so turned around, so confused about what was real and what wasn't. The friendship became a minefield. I never knew what would set her off, what innocent comment or shared excitement would trigger another. Confrontation. I started walking on eggshells around her, censoring myself, trying to be the friend she wanted me to be instead of the person I actually was. It was exhausting and soul-crushing, but I couldn't bear the thought of losing her. She'd been my anchor, for so long that I didn't know how to exist without her. Things came to a head near the end of the semester. I'd been selected to present my research at a regional conference, something that could potentially open doors for graduate school applications. It was a huge opportunity, and I was terrified and excited in equal measure. I knew I should tell Sarah, but I dreaded her reaction. I put off telling her for days, which only made me feel more guilty. When I finally told her, her response was worse than I'd imagined. She didn't even pretend to be happy for me. She just stared at me for a long moment and then said, "Of course you were. You've been working really hard to impress people, haven't you?" What does that mean? Nothing. Forget it. Congratulations. But the word came out like a curse. I should have walked away then. I should have recognised that this wasn't friendship anymore, if it ever really had been. But I was so invested in saving what we'd had, so convinced that I could fix things if I just tried harder, that I kept fighting for a relationship that was already dead. A week later, everything changed. I was in the student centre, grabbing coffee between classes, when my friend Jake approached me with a weird expression on his face. "Hey, can I talk to you about something?" he asked, looking uncomfortable. "Sure, what's up?" He pulled out his phone and showed me a screenshot. It was from a group chat I wasn't part of, one that included several people from our friend group, including Sarah. The message was from her, sent the night before. It read, "Did you guys see her presentation proposal? She thinks she's some kind of research genius now. It's honestly embarrassing how hard she's trying to impress everyone. Like, we get it. You want attention. The whole thing is so fake and pretentious. She wasn't even that smart when we first met, but now she acts like she's better than all of us." I stared at the screen, reading the words over and over, unable to process what I was seeing. This was Sarah talking about me. Sarah, who I'd trusted with my insecurities, my fears, my dreams. Sarah, who knew exactly how much this research meant to me, who knew how hard I'd worked, how many nights I'd stayed. Up analysing data and refining my methodology. "There's more," Jake said quietly, swiping to show me additional messages. "She's been saying stuff like this for weeks." The next message said, "She's gotten so weird and competitive. I miss when she was just normal and didn't think she was special. Now everything is about her achievements and her future plans. It's like she forgot where she came from." And then, "Honestly, I don't think her research is even that good. I've seen her work, and it's pretty basic stuff that she's trying to make. Sound groundbreaking, but everyone just encourages her because they feel sorry for her." Each word was a knife, but what hurt most wasn't just the cruelty of what she'd said, it was the calculated nature of it. She hadn't lashed out in anger or said something in the heat of the moment. She'd sat in her room, typed out these messages, thought about them, and hit send. She'd been building a case against me behind my back, turning our friends against me, making me into a villain in a story I didn't even know. I was part of. "Why are you showing me this?" I asked Jake, my voice barely above a whisper. "Because it's not fair," he said, "and because most of us don't agree with her. Your research is impressive, and you've never been anything but supportive of everyone else. I don't know what her problem is, but she's been getting worse lately." I thanked Jake and stumbled to the nearest bathroom, where I locked myself in a stall and cried harder than I had since I was a child. It wasn't just the betrayal, though that was devastating enough. It was the realisation that while I'd been agonising over our friendship, trying to figure out what I'd done wrong, she'd been systematically destroying my reputation behind my back. Every smile, every congratulations, every moment of what I'd thought was her trying to be supportive despite her struggles had been an act. But there was something else that hurt even more. Some of what she'd said echoed my own deepest insecurities. Was I trying too hard? Was I being fake? Had success changed me in ways I couldn't see? The fact that my own best friend could believe these things about me made me question everything I thought I knew about myself. I avoided Sarah for the rest of the week, but I couldn't avoid her forever. She cornered me in our usual study spot, in the library, sliding into the chair across from me like nothing had happened. "You've been avoiding me," she said, not bothering with pleasantries. I looked up from my textbook, my heart pounding. "I've been busy." "With what? More research? More networking? More impressing professors?" There was the Sarah I'd been seeing more and more of lately, the one who couldn't let a conversation pass without taking a shot at me. But now I knew it wasn't just to my face. It was constant, behind my back, poisoning every interaction we had, with other people. "Someone showed me a screenshot," I said quietly. Her face changed instantly. The mask of casual cruelty slipped, and for a moment I saw something that might have been shame. But it was gone so quickly, I might have imagined it. A screenshot of what? You know what. We stared at each other across the table, years of friendship, and months of tension hanging between us like a broken bridge. I waited for her to apologise, to explain, to show some recognition of how deeply she'd hurt me. Instead, she doubled down. "If you have something to say, just say it." "Fine. Why? Why would you say those things about me? Why would you try to turn our friends against me? I thought you cared about me." "I do care about you. That's why I'm trying to help you see what you've become." The audacity of that statement left me speechless for a moment. What I've become? You used to be humble. You used to be relatable. Now everything is about your achievements and your big plans and how special you are. You've forgotten about the people who were there before you got successful. "I'm not successful," I said, louder than I intended. "I'm a college student who works hard and gets excited about opportunities. That's not the same thing as thinking I'm better than everyone else. Isn't it? When's the last time you asked me about my life without it being a setup to talk about yours? That's not fair, and you know it. Every time I try to share something positive, you make me feel guilty about it, so I stopped sharing. But that didn't make you happy either. Nothing makes you happy anymore when it comes to me." She was quiet for a long moment, and I thought maybe I'd gotten through to her. Maybe she'd finally see what she'd been doing, how she'd been hurting me, how she'd been sabotaging our friendship. Instead, she said, "You're right. Nothing about you makes me happy anymore." The words hit me like a slap, not because they were angry, but because they were said so calmly, so matter-of-factly, like she'd been thinking about it for a while and had finally decided to be honest. "Then why are we still friends?" I asked. "I don't know," she said. "Maybe we're not." I asked her why. I needed to understand how we'd gotten to this point, how someone I'd loved like a sister could turn against me so completely. Her answer was simple and devastating. "You changed," she said, and for the first time in months I agreed with her. "You're right, I did change, but not in the way you think. I had changed. I'd become more confident, more ambitious, more willing to pursue opportunities that scared me. I'd started believing that I was capable of more than I'd ever imagined. I'd grown into a version of myself that I actually liked, instead of the anxious, self-doubting person I'd been when we first met. I changed because I grew up," I continued. "I stopped apologising for wanting things. I stopped making myself smaller to make other people comfortable. And if that's the problem, if that's what you can't forgive me for, then you're right. Maybe we're not friends anymore." She stared at me for a long moment, and I could see her processing what I'd said. For a second, I thought she might apologise, might admit that her behaviour had been unfair, might try to salvage what was left of our relationship. Instead, she stood up, gathered her things and said, "I guess we're not." That was it. No dramatic confrontation, no screaming match, no final emotional goodbye. Just a quiet acknowledgement that what we'd had was over, killed not by distance or circumstance, but by her inability to celebrate my growth and my refusal to shrink myself, to accommodate her discomfort. The hardest part wasn't losing her, though that was painful enough. The hardest part was unlearning all the ways she'd taught me to doubt myself. I kept reaching for my phone to text her when something good happened, or when I needed advice, or when I saw something that reminded me of an inside joke we'd shared. It took months to break the habit of wanting to share my life with someone who'd made it clear that my happiness was a burden to her. I found myself second-guessing every achievement, wondering if I was being too proud, too ambitious, too much. Had I really changed for the worse? Was I actually becoming the person she'd described in those messages? It took time and distance and conversations with other friends to realise that growth isn't something to apologise for. Success isn't something to be ashamed of, and the people who truly love you will celebrate your victories, not resent them. Slowly, I started rebuilding my confidence and my social circle. I found friends who cheered for my successes without keeping score, who supported my ambitions without feeling threatened by them, who understood that friendship isn't a competition where one person's growth diminishes everyone else. I learned to trust my own perceptions again, to believe in my own worth, to stop apologising for taking up space in the world. The research presentation went well. Better than well, actually. I was invited to collaborate on a follow-up study, which led to other opportunities, which led to a graduate school acceptance with funding. Each step forward felt like a small victory, not just professionally, but personally. Proof that I was capable of more than I'd ever imagined, that the confidence I'd been building was justified, that the person I was becoming was worth fighting for. I still think about Sarah sometimes. I wonder if she ever realised what she'd done, if she ever felt remorse for the way she'd treated me, if she found peace with her own path instead of focusing on mine. I hope she did. I don't wish her harm, but I also don't wish her back in my life. Some relationships serve their purpose and then need to end, and ours had run its course. The experience taught me something crucial about success and friendship and the kind of person I want to be. Success doesn't change people, it just reveals who was never okay with seeing you shine. The people who belong in your life will grow with you, celebrate with you, and support your journey even when it takes you places they can't follow. The ones who don't belong will make your achievements about them, your growth about their insecurity, your happiness about their pain. I learned to pay attention to how people react when good things happen to me. Do they light up with genuine joy? Or do they dim slightly? Do they ask questions because they're interested? Or do they change the subject because they're uncomfortable? Do they celebrate my victories as if they're their own? Or do they minimize them to make themselves feel better? These reactions tell you everything you need to know about where you stand with someone. I also learned the importance of surrounding yourself with people who inspire you to be better, not people who need you to be smaller. Life is too short and too precious to spend it apologising for your own growth, dimming your own light, or shrinking yourself to fit into spaces that were never meant for the person you're becoming. The friendship with Sarah taught me what I don't want in my relationships, but it also taught me what I do want. I want friends who see my potential even when I can't see it myself. I want people in my life who push me to dream bigger, not smaller. I want relationships built on mutual support and genuine celebration, not competition and comparison. Now, when I achieve something I'm proud of, I share it without apology. When I have exciting news, I tell people who I know will be genuinely happy for me. When I set ambitious goals, I surround myself with people who believe in my ability to achieve them. It's a completely different way of living, and it's revolutionary in the best possible way. If you've been through something like this, if you've had someone in your life who couldn't handle your growth, who made your success about their failure, who tried to convince you that wanting more was somehow wrong, I want you to know something. Their reaction says nothing about you and everything about them. Your growth is not an attack on their choices. Your success is not a commentary on their struggles. Your happiness is not a judgment of their circumstances. You don't have to make yourself smaller to make other people more comfortable. You don't have to apologise for outgrowing relationships that no longer serve you. You don't have to dim your light so that others don't feel overshadowed. The right people, the people who belong in your life, will be inspired by your shine, not threatened by it. It took me a long time to understand that losing Sarah wasn't a failure on my part. It wasn't something I could have prevented by being different, by achieving less, by wanting smaller things for myself. It was simply the natural end of a relationship that had served its purpose. She was exactly the friend I needed when I was the person I used to be. But I outgrew that version of myself, and she couldn't accept the person I was becoming. That's not a tragedy. That's life. People come into our lives for different reasons and different seasons. Some are meant to stay forever, growing and changing alongside us. Others are meant to be temporary, teaching us lessons we need to learn, and then moving on when those lessons are complete. Sarah taught me about loyalty and trust, and the importance of having someone in your corner. But she also taught me about envy and betrayal, and the danger of staying in relationships that require you to be less than you are. Both lessons were valuable, even though one was much more painful than the other. I'm grateful for the friendship we had when it was good, and I'm grateful for the strength I found when it turned toxic. I'm grateful for the confidence I built, in spite of her attempts to tear it down, and I'm grateful for the clarity that came from finally understanding what real friendship looks like. If you're in a situation like this right now, if you have someone in your life who makes you feel guilty for growing, who turns your achievements into character flaws, who can't celebrate your victories without making them about their own struggles, I want you to consider the possibility that the problem isn't you. Maybe you haven't changed for the worse. Maybe you've changed for the better and they can't handle it. Maybe you've stopped accepting less than you deserve, and that makes them uncomfortable because they're still settling. Maybe you've started believing in your own potential, and that threatens them because they've given up on theirs. Maybe you've decided to pursue your dreams with passion and dedication, and that feels like a judgment of their own lack of ambition. None of those things are your fault or your responsibility to fix. You can't make someone else comfortable with your growth by stunting it. You can't make someone else happy with your success by sabotaging it. You can't make someone else secure in your friendship by proving that you're not outgrowing them, especially when you are. Growth is supposed to be uncomfortable. It's supposed to push boundaries and challenge dynamics and change relationships. That's not a bug, it's a feature. The discomfort means it's working. The resistance means you're moving in the right direction. The fact that not everyone can come with you on your journey doesn't mean you should stop taking it. I wish I could go back and tell my younger self that Sarah's reaction to my success said nothing about me and everything about her. I wish I could save myself months of self-doubt and second-guessing. I wish I could spare myself the pain of trying to shrink back into a version of myself that I'd already outgrown. But I also know that going through that experience, as painful as it was, taught me lessons I couldn't have learned any other way. I learned that I'm stronger than I thought I was. I learned that I can survive the loss of someone I thought I couldn't, live without. I learned that my worth isn't determined by other people's ability to see it. I learned that the right opportunities will come to me, regardless of who supports them and who doesn't. I learned that I can trust my own judgment, my own perceptions, my own instincts about what's right for my life. Most importantly, I learned that I don't have to choose between success and relationships. I just have to choose better relationships. The people who are meant to be in my life will celebrate my achievements as if they're their own. They'll support my dreams even when they don't understand them. They'll love me not in spite of my ambition, but because of it. Those people exist. I found them eventually. I found friends who text me excited messages when I share good news. I found mentors who push me toward opportunities I'm not sure I'm ready for. I found a community of people who understand that success is not a zero-sum game, that one person's achievement doesn't diminish everyone else's potential. But I had to make space for those people by letting go of the ones who couldn't handle my growth. I had to stop trying to save relationships that were already over. I had to accept that not everyone who starts the journey with you is meant to finish it with you, and that's okay. If you've been carrying the weight of someone else's inability to celebrate your success, it's time to put it down. If you've been apologizing for outgrowing relationships that no longer serve you, it's time to stop. If you've been dimming your light to make others more comfortable, it's time to shine as brightly as you're capable of. The world needs what you have to offer. Your dreams matter. Your ambitions are valid. Your growth is not a threat to anyone, except the people who have chosen to stay stagnant. And those people, as hard as it is to accept, are not your responsibility. You are responsible for your own growth, your own happiness, your own success. You are responsible for pursuing your dreams with passion and dedication. You are responsible for becoming the best version of yourself, regardless of who can or can't handle that transformation. You are not responsible for making other people comfortable with your evolution. You are not responsible for staying small, so that others don't feel left behind. You are not responsible for choosing failure to preserve relationships that require it. I know it's scary to outgrow people you love. I know it's painful to realize that someone you trusted has been working against you behind your back. I know it's difficult to rebuild your confidence after someone has systematically tried to tear it down. But I also know that on the other side of that pain is a life that's bigger and brighter and more authentic than anything you could have imagined. The story I've shared with you isn't really about Sarah, even though she played a crucial role in it. It's about learning to value yourself enough to walk away from people who don't. It's about understanding that your growth is not up for debate or approval. It's about recognizing that the people who belong in your life will rise with you, not try to pull you down. It's about the moment you realize that you'd rather be alone and authentic than surrounded by people who need you to be someone you're not. It's about the freedom that comes from finally stopping the exhausting work of trying to manage other people's insecurities about your success. It's about the peace that comes from surrounding yourself with people who see your potential and celebrate your progress toward it. That's the real victory in this story, not the research opportunities or the conference presentations or the graduate school acceptance, though those were wonderful. The real victory was learning to stand firmly in my own worth, to trust my own path, to believe in my own dreams regardless of who else believed in them. The real victory was realizing that I didn't need Sarah's approval to pursue my dreams. I didn't need her validation to know that my achievements were meaningful. I didn't need her permission to be proud of my hard work. I didn't need her friendship to prove that I was worthy of love and support. The hardest lesson I learned was that some people will love you for who you were, but they can't love you for who you're becoming, and that's not your fault. That's not something you can fix by changing yourself, or by trying harder, or by being more considerate of their feelings. That's their limitation, not yours. Sarah loved the version of me that was insecure and dependent on her validation. She loved being the confident one, the one with all the answers, the one who could make me feel better about myself when I was struggling. But when I started finding my own confidence, when I stopped needing her reassurance, when I began to believe in myself independently, that threatened the dynamic she was comfortable with. She didn't know how to be friends with someone who didn't need saving. She didn't know how to relate to me when I wasn't constantly seeking her approval. She couldn't figure out what her role was in my life when I stopped making her the center of it. And instead of growing with me, instead of finding a new way to connect, she chose to tear me down so that I would go back to being the person she knew how to handle. That's a profound form of selfishness, and it took me a long time to recognize it for what it was. I kept thinking there was something I could do differently, some way I could maintain our friendship while still pursuing my goals. I kept believing that if I could just find the right balance, if I could just be more humble or more inclusive, or more mindful of her feelings, we could make it work. But you can't balance someone else's jealousy. You can't humble yourself enough to make an insecure person secure. You can't include someone in your success if they're actively rooting for your failure. You can't be mindful enough of someone's feelings if those feelings are fundamentally hostile to your well-being. The months after our friendship ended were some of the loneliest of my life. I had to completely rebuild my social circle, my support system, my sense of who I was without her constant presence. I had to learn how to celebrate my achievements without immediately thinking about how Sarah would react to them. I had to retrain my brain to stop filtering every experience through the lens of her potential disapproval. But slowly, gradually, I began to discover what life looked like when I wasn't constantly worried about making someone else comfortable with my choices. I started saying yes to opportunities without considering whether they would make Sarah jealous. I started sharing my excitement about projects without immediately downplaying them. I started dreaming bigger because I wasn't afraid of how those dreams would be received. The change was transformative. When you stop spending energy managing other people's insecurities about your success, you have so much more energy to actually pursue that success. When you stop apologizing for your ambitions, you can channel that emotional energy into achieving them. When you stop shrinking yourself to fit into relationships that can't handle your full size, You discover exactly how much space you're capable of taking up in the world. I started connecting with people who were on similar paths, who understood the drive to constantly improve and grow and push boundaries. I found mentors who saw potential in me that I didn't even know existed. I discovered communities of ambitious, passionate people who celebrated each other's victories instead of keeping score. I learned what it felt like to be surrounded by people who wanted to see me succeed, not because it reflected well on them, but because they genuinely cared about my happiness. The contrast was startling. In healthy relationships, your success becomes a source of inspiration, not competition. Your achievements become proof that their dreams are possible too, not evidence that they're falling behind. Your growth becomes something to learn from, not something to resent. I realised that I'd been so focused on trying to save my friendship with Sarah that I'd never stopped to consider whether it was worth saving. I'd been so invested in proving that I hadn't changed in ways that mattered, that I'd never questioned whether the changes I was making were actually positive. I'd been so afraid of losing her that I'd almost lost myself. The truth is, I had changed. I'd become more confident, more ambitious, more willing to take risks and pursue opportunities that scared me. I'd developed higher standards for how I wanted to be treated and what I was willing to accept in my relationships. I'd grown into someone who believed in her own potential instead of constantly doubting it. Those changes weren't flaws to be corrected. They were growth to be celebrated. The fact that Sarah couldn't handle them said nothing about whether they were good or bad changes. It only said that she wasn't equipped to be part of my journey anymore. This realization was both liberating and heartbreaking. Liberating because it freed me from the exhausting work of trying to be someone I wasn't. Heartbreaking because it meant accepting that someone I'd loved deeply simply wasn't capable of loving the person I was becoming. But acceptance, I learned, is different from approval. I didn't have to approve of Sarah's behaviour to accept that. It revealed fundamental incompatibilities between us. I didn't have to understand her choices to accept that they made a continued friendship impossible. I didn't have to forgive her betrayal to accept that it had taught me valuable lessons about myself and what I wanted in my relationships. The research conference presentation that had been such a source of conflict between us ended up being a turning point in my academic career. The project caught the attention of a professor from another university who invited me to collaborate on a larger study. That collaboration led to publications, which led to conference presentations, which led to graduate school opportunities I'd never dreamed of. None of this would have been possible if I'd listened to Sarah's version of who I should be. If I'd stayed small to keep her comfortable, if I'd downplayed my achievements to protect her feelings, if I'd chosen our friendship over my own growth, I would have missed out on opportunities that changed the entire trajectory of my life. That's the insidious thing about relationships that require you to diminish yourself. They don't just limit your present happiness, they limit your future potential. Every time you shrink to accommodate someone else's insecurity, you close doors that might have led to incredible opportunities. Every time you apologize for your ambition, you send a message to the universe that you don't believe you deserve the things you're working toward. I think about this a lot when I'm talking to young women who are struggling with similar situations. The pressure to be humble, to not shine too brightly, to make sure everyone else is comfortable with your success is enormous. We're taught that being ambitious is somehow selfish, that celebrating our achievements is arrogant, that outgrowing relationships is a betrayal of the people who knew us when we were smaller. But here's what I wish someone had told me when I was going through this. Your growth is not a betrayal of anyone. Your success is not an attack on anyone else's circumstances. Your refusal to stay small is not a judgment of people who choose to remain comfortable where they are. You are allowed to outgrow people. You are allowed to want more than what's satisfied. You in the past. You are allowed to pursue opportunities that excite you, even if they intimidate others. You are allowed to be proud of your hard work and your achievements. You are allowed to surround yourself with people who celebrate your victories instead of minimizing them. Most importantly, you are allowed to end relationships that require you to be less than you are. Even if those relationships were once meaningful. Even if the person was once important to you. Even if ending it feels like losing a part of yourself. Sometimes the most loving thing you can do for someone is to outgrow them. Sometimes the kindest thing you can do is to stop enabling their inability to handle your success. Sometimes the healthiest thing you can do is to walk away from people who need you to fail in order to feel good about themselves. This doesn't make you selfish or ungrateful or disloyal. It makes you someone who values herself enough to choose relationships that support her growth rather than stunting it. It makes you someone who understands that love shouldn't require diminishment, that friendship shouldn't demand apologies. For success, that support shouldn't come with conditions that keep you small. The aftermath of losing Sarah taught me to pay attention to how people in my life respond to my good news. Do they genuinely celebrate with me, or do they find ways to diminish my achievements? Do they ask questions because they're interested in my growth, or do they change the subject because my success makes them uncomfortable? Do they encourage my dreams, or do they plant seeds of doubt about whether I'm capable of achieving them? These responses tell you everything you need to know about whether someone belongs in your future. The people who are meant to stay in your life will be genuinely excited about your opportunities, even when they don't fully understand them. They'll support your ambitions, even when those ambitions take you places they can't follow. They'll love you not in spite of your growth, but because of it. I've been fortunate to find those people. The friends I have now are the kind who text me excited messages when I share good news. They're the kind who push me toward opportunities I'm not sure I'm ready for. They're the kind who celebrate my victories as if they're their own, because, in a way, they are. In healthy relationships, we're all invested in each other's success. We understand that when one of us wins, we all win. We know that supporting each other's growth doesn't diminish our own potential, it expands it. We celebrate each other's achievements because we know that their success creates possibilities for our own. That's what real friendship looks like. That's what genuine support feels like. That's what love does when it's not contaminated by jealousy or insecurity, or the need to keep others small to feel big yourself. I'm sharing this story not because I want sympathy, or because I'm still angry about what happened. I'm sharing it because I know there are people listening who are going through something similar right now. Maybe you have someone in your life who makes you feel guilty for your achievements. Maybe you're questioning whether your growth is worth the relationships it's costing you. Maybe you're wondering if you're being too ambitious, too proud, too much. I want you to know that you're not. I want you to know that the right people will grow with you, not resent you for growing. I want you to know that real love celebrates your expansion, not demands your contraction. I want you to know that choosing yourself, choosing your dreams, choosing your growth is not selfish. It's necessary. The world needs what you have to offer. Your ambitions matter. Your dreams are valid. Your potential is real. Don't let anyone convince you otherwise, even if that someone once meant everything to you. Success doesn't change people. It just reveals who was never okay with seeing you shine. And the people who can't handle your light were never really your people to begin with. If you've stayed with me through this entire story, if something in it resonated with you, I want you to know that you're not alone. Growth is hard. Outgrowing relationships is painful. Choosing yourself over people you love is one of the most difficult things you'll ever do. But it's also one of the most important. You deserve relationships that celebrate your successes, not minimize them. You deserve friends who support your dreams, not sabotage them. You deserve love that expands as you grow, not love that shrinks you to fit someone else's comfort zone. Don't carry the weight of other people's inability to handle your growth. Don't apologize for becoming who you were meant to be. Don't dim your light to make others more comfortable in their darkness. Shine as brightly as you're capable of shining. Pursue your dreams with passion and dedication. Become the person you're meant to become, regardless of who can or can't handle that transformation. The people who belong in your life will find a way to grow with you. The ones who don't will reveal themselves through their resistance to your evolution. Let them. Their response is information, not instruction. Their discomfort is their responsibility, not yours. Thank you for listening to my story. Thank you for letting me share this part of my journey with you. If you've been through something similar, I'd love to hear about it in the comments. If this resonated with you, please share it with someone who might need to hear it. And if you want more stories like this, more honest conversations about the complicated realities of growth and relationships, and choosing yourself, please subscribe. It means more than you know to have people who want to hear these difficult truths, who understand that sometimes the most important stories are the ones that make us uncomfortable to tell. Remember, you are worthy of relationships that celebrate your growth, not resist it. You are deserving of love that expands with you, not love that requires you to stay small. You are capable of more than you know, and the right people will see that potential and encourage it, not fear it. Don't let anyone convince you that your dreams are too big, your ambitions too much, your growth too threatening. The right people will be inspired by your evolution, not intimidated by it. Find those people. Keep those people. Let the others go. Your future self is counting on you to make the brave choice. Choose growth. Choose yourself. Choose the life that's calling to you, even if you have to walk toward it alone for a while. Trust me, the people who are meant to join you on that journey will find their way to you. And when they do, you'll understand why it was so important to let go of the ones who couldn't handle the trip.